What's going on, guys? It's Coan with Tread Athletics. I had the pleasure last night of checking out the Ole Miss Clemson game, and Doug Nikhazy happened to be throwing, and he had an amazing outing where he went 8 innings, 9 Ks, scattered 4 hits. I think maybe had 1 walk, but I was actually watching it with Dennis, our head performance coach, and he posed a great question. He said, for a guy at the top of his game, where do you see his mechanics kind of having to progress to continue to improve his ability to obviously boost his velocity ceiling and his draft stock and ultimately his kind of projectability at the next level. True freshman, young guy, 89, 91, touching 92. Obviously moves well, a little bit on the shorter end of the spectrum at 5'10". But what I wanted to do today is talk a little bit through what I would identify as his lowest hanging fruit as far as what we would be working on if he were one of our athletes. And with that, I want to talk about kind of the hump that he has in his arm. So basically his arm spiral and what we would work on improving there. Identifying that, and then potentially what those contributing factors could be to improving this particular issue that I'm seeing. With that, obviously does an excellent job of getting into positions. So he sits into his back leg extremely well, projects his center of mass forward, does a great job at foot strike of getting himself into a front leg extended position. He's got his knee turned down, and then from there I see a little bit of a leak in energy. With that, just identifying it real quick here is once he gets down at landing here, I want you to notice his shoulder angle, and I want you to notice the relation of his humerus to his shoulder angle, and then where his forearm is in relation to that. So essentially what I would like to see is him be a little bit higher with that humerus, so we would call this or term this low elbow. With that, we want to be seeing the elbow a little bit higher. We'd want to see his arm more flipped up at landing. He does obviously a great job of sequencing this in. The velocity is there as far as his ability to perform, but there's a lot that I think is left from there with that, particularly identifying what happens. So from this position, we'd obviously like to see a little bit more horizontal rotation. We're going to see a little bit more vertical rotation than I would like to see. Essentially the elbow is going to climb and it's going to project forward. So from here, I would like him to be able to swing his humerus out. Instead, he has to elevate his humerus and essentially throw over his front side rather than throwing through his front side. And what we're going to see is this humping effect from there. So he's going to get great extension over that front leg, gets in great positions. But what I want you to see is as we translate these frames, I want you to see his elbow essentially hump over the front side rather than getting the rotational component where if his elbow is in line, so if he's here, his humerus is higher, the arm is flipped up, and then translated back a few degrees, then we're able to rotate around here and toward home plate, so we're able to kind of combine a little bit more of the merry-go-round effect rather than the Ferris wheel effect, which Ben talks a lot about with the shoulder plane of rotation talk. All right, so we've talked a lot about what he needs to work on, but now what we need to talk about is the contributing factors to this and how we can actually improve it. So the biggest things for me are going to be, so we're going to go pecs, we're going to go lats, we're going to go tricep, and then we're going to go posterior tilt of the scap, and we're going to go thoracic rotation. So those would be my biggest heavy hitters. So obviously doing targeted soft tissue work, correctives, dynamic strengthening of those, and then obviously working into the cueing and the patterning drills that come along with that. So definitely doing an arm action heavy patterning as far as that's concerned, keeping everything else the same, which is obviously easier said than done. With that, not getting too crazy, but definitely trying to improve his ability to do all of those things I just mentioned, and obviously get his arm into a better flipped up position at landing. So what's it worth? This is a big question we get from a lot of our athletes. Obviously we want to place the highest priority on the lowest hanging fruit that have basically the highest potential for return. And so what I've come up with is a term we call average estimated value. And essentially it's subjective, but it's based on our experiences with lots of athletes. What we'll do is, based on the severity of a mechanical flaw, we'll essentially place a velocity value on that. And so for me, this is the difference between him probably being an 89, 91, touching 92 guy to being that 92 to 94 guy. So it's probably worth on average about 3 miles per hour based on our experiences. Obviously want to give a big shout out to Nikhazy and his dominant outing, and wish them the best of luck as they move through the rest of the regional and into the super regional.